And then we have the geese come in afterwards. Yes, and then you gotta fight the concept that you don't want to have the babies.
I've got a 3-year-old that I can just let him roam around.
So you can bring them anytime. Yeah, bring him over. Yesterday, Coots was out there, there was a ball beam that came down right in front of my bedroom, right in front of the window. It was trying to pull the food out of the water. I was trying to get a baby to let it in. Yeah.
I mean, Coots, they would separate.
Try
To separate, so they come down and get down. Strange.
3 months.
Is it 6:30?
Yes.
Certainly.
I'd like to call this special meeting of the Culver Board of Zoning Appeals to order. Ask everybody to please stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting tonight. I would like to remind you that this is being recorded. And it's also, we have people joining us online, I believe. Start out by having roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Melchin.
Present.
Mr. Osborne.
Present.
Mr. McManaway.
Present.
Mr. Adams.
Present.
I'm present. J.D. Ubler. And then joining us too, our Culver Commissioner, Mr. DeWitt.
Present.
And our Culver Town Manager, Ms. Ginny Monroe.
Thank you, Mr. Euler. Third item on the agenda, would like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the March 17th meeting.
Make a motion, we approve the minutes of March 17th meeting.
Been moved and properly seconded that we approve the minutes from the March 17th meeting. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Pass 5-0.
This is a note from Blue Comet. Serial March again. Sure.
Okay, email it to them.
Okay, we only have petition on the agenda this evening. That's the reason for the special meeting. And I believe David Barker is going to be presenting the presentation. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Adams and members of
Excuse
the
me just a
board.
second.
I'm sorry.
Anybody that is speaking is being recorded either online or here.
I did say that.
You did.
I apologize. I apologize. I'm here trying to get my link going.
Note that Chuck was napping.
Yes. Again, say again.
Thank you, though. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Thank you. So President Adams, and members of the board, Commissioner DeWitt and Ms. Monroe, as town manager, thank you. I am David Barker on behalf of CSW Holdings LLC, members of CSW Holdings are Patsy Skelton to my right, Nancy Werner to my left, Terry Callan behind. So they are here for any questions that the board would have as well. Obviously, I'm here on 2022-005B, a petition involving real estate located at 1150 West South Street. Merely asking for a side yard setback variance from 25 feet to 11.2 feet at its closest distance. The closest part of a first level bedroom for handicap accessibility for their mother. That's the closest corner of the bedroom, and it's on the plat, which we've sent to you, but there's a larger plat if you'd like to look at it. The further corner is 15.6 feet, so it's not 11.2 feet consistent, but that is the closest point to the roadway. Also here tonight, I'd introduce Heather Richards, who is paralegal out of Barker Law Offices with me. And I would also note for the record that Dean Jones of Marar Custom Homes, who is planning to build the home for CSW, is here. I want to note for the record that the town of Culver indicated they would support this variance request as long as the two parcels owned by CSW were combined or joined. Those parcels were combined. Legal description was combined into one. That has been filed, recorded with the Marshall County Auditor and Recorder's Office. And in your packet, I gave you a copy of that combined legal description. And I think that met some of the requirements of the town to get that done. In addition to creating the one parcel, I think it should be noted with respect to this variance tonight that the home that sits on there now had a driveway that opened up to the south. So when you come around the curve, if someone's backing out, they're backing right into that curve. The new plat, which we provided you a copy of, is we've redesigned that driveway to go out to South Street so that wouldn't affect that turning radius on the curve from a safety issue. I know that early on, there were some concerns of neighbors saying, hey, if this is 11.2 foot variance and cars are coming out of the house and cars are coming at you. So we've also taken the time to eliminate that safety issue in our mind and on paper. The handicap accessible bedroom on the West Shore Drive side is also buffered by the current tree line, if you noticed that or been by that. The necessity for the side yard setback variance was at the request of adjoining neighbors in wanting the home to be closer to South Street. So if you look at the plat, we push the home back as far as we can push the home to still comply with the rear yard setback. And that's why we get into the 25-foot side yard setback. If you follow that 25-foot side yard setback as it goes toward the lake, it actually becomes a 10-foot side yard setback. So that was done to satisfy adjoining neighbors. With respect to the variance tonight, we think it's straightforward. Again, it's simply, we're here for a side yard setback variance. We think it's not injurious to public health, safety, morals, general welfare of the community. Granted, the variance will reduce it from 25 feet to 11.2 feet, resulting in a 13.8 foot reduction. But if you look at West Shore Drive and that side yard setback, there is not a neighboring home because it's separated by the street. So it's not like you're getting closer to another home. I know early on, again, looking back at minutes from this BZA, that there was some concerns about fire spread. And trust me, this is not even close. That's not an issue when you drive around the lake and look at some of the structures where you can almost reach out one window and touch another home. So we did address that as well. The area is not going to be impacted with respect to 11.2 foot side yard setback. There's no water runoff. We're not creating any additional water runoff. There's no easement utilities that's bothered on that side at all. And there's no air or light space that's being affected by that. So we point that out to you per the findings of fact that I submitted. The second issue in the findings of fact is that the use and value of the property adjacent to the area, including the variance, will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. There's no home immediately adjacent, again, on the West Shore Drive. And as to the homes that go to the north, as you can see from the proposed plat, and the size of the home, we're gonna be very consistent with the homes that have been built there. And that should not be an issue. We're also working with landscape architects, not only with the driveway, but with the buffering situation on the 11.2 foot setback. So that will be done with respect to that. Lastly, on the findings of fact, we talked about that practical difficulties with respect to this. Well, obviously the use of it, we've got a wheelchair bound mother, grandmother, and that's part of this family, and that's what that bedroom's gonna be used for. But if you also go to the shape of the now one parcel, it's a pie shape. And because of that pie shape, that creates the hardship with respect to the necessity to get this side yard setback. So that's really the practical difficulty is trying to fit the house in on that parcel. And with that said, you know, again, to not grant the variance, you're talking about major economic issue along with a major community issue of trying to now, how do you develop a home? Do we got to go seek other variances? Do we got to get a height variance? Do we have an elevator? I mean, you're doing a lot of different stuff. So in working with the town and the building commissioner, this was the least of all evils to try to limit this to not have multiple variances before the board. So we are asking that be granted tonight. And we have letter of intent, all the documents filed. We could, if someone did not get those, but I think we covered everybody's emails. We have those computer work Fridays. We can send them as well. Again, the members are here to answer questions if you need to, but it's purely an isolated issue that we're asking the board to rule on tonight. Thank you.
Just by way of record, before we ask questions, Mr. Baker, as a secretary and for the record, are you okay with me copying in your letter of intent and statements, the general welfare, the adjacent property, the statement you make on practical difficulty and undue hardship? Can I copy the answers to the
Absolutely.
record? I mean, you summarize them, but. Okay,
Yeah,
you good with
absolutely.
that? All right.
Yes, thank you.
I don't know, is your drawing that you have there the same as we have?
It is. Yeah.
Do you? Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have where the current house is? Is this whole house coming down and a new one built, or is this?
That is the plan. This whole, the existing structure would come down.
Do you know exactly where the old house is? Do you have it?
I think the old house, I may have a document with that, but is essentially setting where the core of this house is set. This is a screened-in porch on the second story that sticks out, but if you look at that, you're still 91.2 feet from the high water mark.
Okay, and
So. There's this. Closest it comes now is this point. Do you have any idea what that distance is there from the present house?
I know in the present house, it is currently in violation, but not to the extent that we're asking of this variant, but it is not 25 feet. And I think the surveyor had indicated that it was maybe 19.6 per my memory.
Okay, and so it looks like in these trees, you're talking about in here is the farthest distance, right?
Yes.
The
The closest distance, 11.2.
It's about in here
Right.
rather than there.
Right. And then,
Because it curves, I'm just wondering if it's about the same, except it's further up curve.
so that's it there. And then this was 15.9. It's about in the tree line, that far point.
This is 11.2 from here.
Right, right. And then this is, well, it appears to be right in the middle of the tree line. Which is about right here.
But where's this measure?
And this would be 15.9
From here to,
to the edge, the boundary.
so you're talking about right here.
Yes. But because the way the ordinance is written, we have to request 11.2. We can't, because that is the closest distance, so we can't average that, but I would think that
So
would
the
be.
15, you're talking about is 15 point.
Yeah, I'm just saying, we're getting
Here,
away
okay.
from it, we're getting wider as we go.
Okay, right, okay.
It's a corner.
Yeah, it's a corner, so there is more distance, and that's what I was, so.
Did you want to see that picture? Yeah. Questions from the board?
Is the greenscaping there required? Because it's on the curve, the tree line, is that required?
No, that was owner preference. It's nothing that we.
That's my own process.
Would it be something that I would recommend and encourage? Absolutely. I've talked to the owners, I talked to the builder saying that would be great to leave that there and extend it if that's possible.
Conifer, some sort of conifer tree, right?
Yeah, it's
Arborvitae.
But is there one of those trees actually on the,
They're on the town front.
They're in the right of way.
on the right of way? I should have said, yeah, it's actually have right of way.
Oh, actually, no, they're in the house.
they're on the owner's property.
Correct. And it's an intent to keep that.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
I know
you
the
want
last
that
meeting.
there.
Yeah.
You don't want to.
You don't want headlights.
No.
And in fact, I mean, our intent is to make it very pretty and
Right, I got
we're gonna spend, significant money on landscaping just to make that corner look really pretty is our goal.
It's also interesting to note that that 25-yard setback is from the property line, but our property line is 17 feet at the closest to the road. So there's a big buffer already from the road, side of the road to the property line. So it's a lot greater distance than just 25 feet from the road.
Oh, as far as from.
Add another 17 feet to that, and you hit the road.
17 feet. Tree line.
Any other questions from the board?
I don't have any question. I'd like to make a comment. Nobody knows any more than I do about the traffic on West Shore Drive, because I live at the bottom of the hill. And changing the ingress and egress to South Street, I think is a major plus. And not being able to have that going in and out of there. Because there's times when people are going 50 and 60 miles an hour up that hill. And it's, it can be a real problem. That's all I have to say. Oh, one more thing. Mr. Barker, I know that this is like a little bit of a mistake, but when you combine the legal descriptions of these two properties, you put East Shore Drive instead of West Shore Drive?
Yeah, that's been corrected since that's been
Okay.
emailed to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
just want to make sure. I didn't know they had some property on each side of the lake.
We keep turning the report about this.
Yeah, okay.
Mr. McMahon, do you have any questions? Mr. Uter?
I did, hold on, I had to find it. Is this the CSW Holdings primary residence?
No.
Will the mother be living full-time in the residence?
No.
You mentioned in the finding of facts that the lot is unique. At post the parcel coming together, could you explain one more time how the lot is?
Well, just because of the pie-shaped nature of it, if it was a square lot as you proceed down the street, it's a lot easier to make rectangular builds. And so this is different from the standpoint of it's getting narrow as it goes back to South Street. And so to push the house back, which was the goal of everyone, that creates the need for the side yard setback. If the house moved forward, you wouldn't have to have this variance. But that would bring up other issues that are sensitive to lake owners, which we understand.
It's also unique in that we have two 25-yard setbacks on three sides. Three of the sides, two of them have 25 setbacks because it's a road. So we have a road on two of the three sides.
So what you're saying is a rear yard because of that road, she has a rear yard that most people don't have as well, and they could go back further. So we went back, then we'd have to have a variance on that side as well.
Yeah, anytime you're in a corner lot.
You have problems
Yeah.
a little bit, yeah.
Doesn't make something unique, but that's becoming a problem.
Right. It becomes practical,
Yeah.
call in, hopefully Mr. Jones and his expertise and success that he's had building up here will solve some of the issues.
Mr. Nelson, did you have any questions?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions or comments? Before I open it up to the floor.
I look at this as almost stamp it and send it through, simply because we have a curve right there. There's already a tree line that's blocking that on their property. And by bringing it 11.2 feet away from that, their property line is still back off the road and will allow cars to go around there. So we didn't want to get closer to the lake, which I'm not sure that I agree with that, but since we're respecting the neighbors, I'm hoping that at this point, they respect what we're up against and what we're trying to do. That's all.
Ms. Monroe, do you have any comments or questions? I'd open it up to the floor. And if you speak, please introduce yourself and so that our secretary can get your name down.
As you would guess, I wish to speak, so I wouldn't have been here. James East today, I represent the two property owners to the north and the one to the south. Basically, start with the side yard setback, that is the only thing they've really asked for, but we'll discuss more. As far as that's concerned, the only question I had about that is, I noticed that all their dimensions are to the foundation. And of course, your ordinance provides that it has to be to the furthest point. And I'm just curious, is there no overhang? Is there nothing reaching out over the foundation? That's the only question I really would have on the side yard setback.
The plot plan does include those.
Yes.
The overhang, foot and a quarter, all the way around.
Okay,
That line is the furthest point.
okay, but the.
For the record, that was discussed at the last meeting.
Yes.
But the plat plan says foundation line. That's the only
Oh,
thing I asked
okay.
that question. When you look at it and based upon what the surveyor put on the plat, it says foundation line. That's the question I had. But to be honest with you, our biggest issue on this whole thing is the fact that we don't believe you can approve the project based upon the lakeside setback. Because he says in page 2 of his submission, well, we meet the 25 foot lakeside setback. That's not the setback on this project. So this project has an average setback or a line of sight setback. And it's because it's a lakeside and it's approved, it's a situation where there's improvements on each side. Now, interestingly enough, in preparing for tonight, it's amazing what I find after 40 years. If you read your ordinance says if the property on either side of the property is improved. I went back and I go, wow, that's weird. So I looked it up. Black's Law Dictionary provides either means one or the other. So if the property on either side of this is improved, according to your ordinance, you have to use the line of sight type of situation. Now, I'll be real candid with you. I don't know that that's ever been done here, but we don't have that issue to really have to worry about it because the property on both sides are improved. And so we maintain that the line of sight is the line of sight between the Warwick House and the Simeon House. We have been dealing with this basically since 2016. If you look in my submission, both back in October and for this meeting, it started with our then town manager. He opined that you take the line between the Warwick House. He sent out a pictorial with that line drawn in, and we maintain that is correct. It's going forward from that day. our clients actually purchased their house based upon their belief that they would not have sight distance problems when they purchased. And so we think that the court, that's right, that spent all day in court today. We think that the board should, quite frankly, follow that and follow the ordinance and not approve the project unless there is a variance for front yard. So that's the essence. If what we say is true, and we believe it is, then you really can't approve the project because we aren't meeting it on the lakeside. Someone asked earlier, what is it on the lakeside? Their proposed house is basically 15.2 feet behind where they're proposing to put the new house. If they put the new house in where that plot plan shows, it would be 10 feet in front of to the lake, 10 feet in front of the Thimian's house to the north. So it's basically pushing out. And that's the issue that we really have in this situation.
So it's not where the present house is. That's why I was
Right.
wanting
No, it's not.
to know where the present house is in this when I looked at it.
President Adams, if I may interject, we are not here today for anything else than a side yard setback. Anything that's been on the record that just recently got stated is irrelevant to what we are asking for as a petitioner. This board has to follow your ordinance with respect to side yard setbacks. And that's what we're asking for.
And that would be.
And if I may,
Oh, yeah, I apologize.
we're not in court. If I may, we followed everything the town has given us. We're abiding by that. And as you've been here before, people wanted to expand the conversation or expand the petition. We're not expanding the petition tonight. We're here for a side yard setback variance, period. And it's not appropriate for an adjacent homeowner to petition this board or demand this board or tell this board what to do with respect to other variances. That's why you have a building commissioner. That's why you have ordinances. And that's what we're following. This board is here to enforce that, to avoid litigation. And all we're asking for is a side yard setback. So everything that's being stated today, unfortunately, is not relevant and should not be in your guys' minds in making a decision on the petition that CSW Holdings has put before you.
And my response to that is, we filed a petition with this board. That petition went before the board on November the 18th, and the board at that time voted not to approve or follow or to affirm the building commissioner's thoughts at that point in time. We have renewed that again with the filing I've made with this meeting, and we think it is appropriate for you to consider.
There has been no petition filed by you for this meeting. You're not on the docket, and it's not appropriate. No, it's not appropriate. You did not file it. You did not send it to all the adjacent owners. You did not do the mailings. You did not do the certified mailings. You had a dispute with the building commissioner, which it was heard at a prior hearing, and they voted on your dispute. That has nothing to do with this petition tonight. Nothing. You haven't done anything appropriate. You have no statutory notice. You have no green cards. Not only did we have legal publication for this docket, we've had multiple mailings. We mailed, and I saw some of the board members say, why did you do that? We belt and suspenders made sure that we mailed twice everything to every adjacent owner. In addition, emailed people. And we had legal publication through Ms. Monroe and through Mr. DeWitt. So we have done everything statutorily required by the Indiana Code and by your ordinances. It is inappropriate for this board to get bullied by adjacent homeowners. If people want to remonstrate and say, we have a concern about the roadway, the safety of the roadway, the nearness of the house, then those are legitimate topics to talk about.
But
I think I've addressed those.
But my problem is that I had, and we came in, we're sitting here talking. The only thing being questioned was the side yard setback, because we thought that was resolved as far as where it was going to be. But if the house is going to be moved closer to the lake than it is now, from the pictures I saw back in November, then I'm having some problems with.
But you,
I-
but that's not before you tonight. It's not the
But if it-
petition.
okay, well, but my question is, if, and maybe, do we have the line of sight of where it should be established? Are we in agreement? I mean, we made that decision in November.
No, that was not,
It's
that was
happened,
not, that was not a decision made in November. And I correct you, President, that was not a decision made in November on this parcel. That was a decision that you didn't like your building commissioner's determination of a line of sight, and you set aside his line of sight. You never voted on a line of sight for this property. And per your ordinance, based on the plat, based on the survey by Bernard Feeney, we don't believe we are required or need a line of sight determination because we're in full compliance with your updated ordinance. All we needed, as I have written documentation from the town, is Mr. Barker has petitioned for CSW, you will need to get a side yard setback variance. That is it. And I have that in writing, and that's what we are here on. And we've spent a lot of money with respect to that. We are certainly sensitive to anything that is created by the side yard setback, but that's it. You cannot mix different hearings and different board meetings and different petitions. We were not part of that petition. We were a remonstrator at that petition. Really, we're the remonstrator. We were a supporter of the building commissioner. But that was not a petition brought on this property.
Did you agree? It was.
I don't want to interrupt him, but I respectfully disagree with his analysis of this. I think you're correct that if you are going to approve a project, you can't approve a project that has parts of it that would not meet the ordinance. That's our whole pitch here.
Just to clarify, if I may, Mr. President, what you're saying is correct, that all you are applying for a side yard setback variance. And what Mr. Easterday is inadvertently trying to say as well, which we have to look at, is if he is saying that there is another variance required, then we would either have to come in with a stipulation, or this would have to be approved for the side yard with a stipulation that you have to get this corrected as well. But that's what we need to look at as far as what he's addressing to us.
And I think you need to, I think you need to listen to your building commissioner and to your staff, because obviously we have an adverse situation here, adversarial. And the point being is the board is guided by the ordinances and by the staff, and the building commissioner has the opportunity. When this was submitted, the only thing that came back from the town of Culver that was required, and I have that in writing, is a side yard setback variance. So to expand that by a third party that has no in this, I think that's incorrect. So I think you have to either vote, deny or approve a side yard setback variance per submitted petition.
Well, and this is an input as far as what we're going through right now. You have your right to speak, and so does anybody else sitting in this chair. So he has his opinion, which we need to hear the opinions of property owners adjacent or anywhere on any of L1 property as far as what is being done here. And what I see right now, I don't know what Mr. Easterday is trying to say, where it's not a line of sight, it's actually a line drawn between the farthest point of the structures on the lake. The line of sight is a verbiage that we have somehow adapted that's been overdrawn. But Mr. Easterday, I want to know where this line that is drawn is needing a variance, where they're putting the house.
The line is approximately at the line of the present structure's wall.
And from what property? From what other structure that we're drawing the line from?
Oh, the line is from the Wyrick residence to the Tinian residence.
It's across the road.
I think we have that picture or something.
Well, I think where my question is, it comes down to anytime this board hears a petition, we may or may not grant the variance, but when we do, we trust Chuck and his team to make sure that all the other ordinances are in line. So he has to check the 35-foot. He's got to check 50% impervious. And so to me, this is no different that Chuck would have to make sure that all other ordinances were abided by. And it also, in this instance, provides Chuck a little bit more guidance in that our November meeting provided him with a little bit more guidance of what the line of sight would be. And so that just helps him even more in determining if an ordinance is checked off or not. Given if this variance passes, he certainly knows that the side yard setback may or may not be approved, but like that would be the guidance for that part. So like, I don't understand how this is anything but a side yard setback conversation, with all due respect to Mr. Easterday and what he brought up, because, you know, Chuck is, so that's what he does. He makes sure that all the ordinances are confirmed and checked off.
And I agree with you 100% on that.
Okay.
But I know at the same time, I mean, with building commissioner, and that's why we have two members as a planning commission as well on the BZA. And for that, I trust our building commissioner because he does work for the town and the planning commission as well. And which, I won't say we're his boss, but at the same time, he's working for the same purpose as the planning commission does. He has the ordinances and he's there to establish, I mean, he will continue to keep going back to this property as the structure being built as well. So he'll check that those ordinances are being protected. Right. But the reason I ask this is because the line of sight, if we're trying to establish it, when they're backing up, it says it cannot be less than 25 feet from the lake. And it's a lot more than 25 feet from the lake. And you're trying to establish a line for what purpose, I guess, is what I need. And it shouldn't matter a person, I guess.
The line for front yard setback.
For a front yard setback, because the ordinance calls for a minimum of 25 feet at the same time.
But the ordinance says if the property on either side of the property is improved, it's not 25 feet.
Can you point us where
But it
you're
can never
seeing
be
that in the
less.
BZA, the ordinance?
21, I think.
I don't think so.
I
I'm
think
just
that's,
curious. I don't, that's not what I read.
the bottom line is from the high water mark, and Bernard went and did this again after the November meeting. We're 91.2 feet back from the high water mark.
Is this front structure a porch or?
That is a screened-in porch, second story screened-in porch. So we're 91.2 feet back. And there is no, again, I mean, get into this whole line of sight discussion. There is no blocking of any site on anybody on this
I'm
property.
looking at the plot plan from
It's
November.
not, there's no.
It looks like you're about 20 feet
No.
from the back, is
There's
that correct?
not in-
Correct. That is correct. We went back 20 feet further. That's why we have to have a side yard setback. We had this whole thing redrawn, thousands and thousands of dollars, because we took to heart what this board said. And now we're working off of what this board said, protecting the neighbors. There is not going to be any visual impairment from anywhere in their home with respect to this home. And I took my paralegals, never been up to your beautiful lake, and we drove around for an hour before it. And there are homes on top of homes and blocked and everything. This is, the whole peculiarity here is it is, as President Adams said, it's a corner lot with two roads. So that's what we're trying to deal with. And we think we have a solution that is best for everyone, period.
And Mr. Easterday, I'm curious, I've read these, I know it's 335 pages. I've probably read these 5 times through. 89 times, Mr. DeWitt is given the authority to make decisions, and this is not administrative decisions. This is legitimate decisions. 89 times he is given authority, which we've relied on several times in this process. And now what you're saying, page 21, that is not, there's nothing what you're saying. I'm curious where in the ordinance you're speaking of, because I've not read that.
It's on page 24.
On page 24.
Page 24.
Okay.
It's up top.
The minimum front yard setback is the second bullet point.
Did the house actually get pushed back since?
20
last time?
feet.
Yeah,
From your previous
I was just
submission.
curious because I knew that the amount that you were, the 11.2, I knew that was exactly the same as the last time, and that's why we didn't think the house had moved.
So last time they had 27.4 on that
Right.
side.
Different plan.
We moved
Yeah.
back again to try to acquiesce
You did?
with
We
you,
did.
because we're trying to do everything we can to be
So
neighborly.
can you show, like,
This is the house we showed you in July,
This is.
when
what
you
we-
came over and we
yeah,
invited
no,
you to
no,
come.
no, I
This
This
would be
is
helpful.
the
Just
house.
If we can, because it's hard to visualize
Sure.
here, right?
Sure.
Like if you could see, again, if the next lot was on here.
Right.
And you could see where our house was.
Right.
Did you have that?
That's what I'm trying to
So,
visualize.
just so you.
When it got moved?
So my, yeah, my
I'm
understanding
trying to verify that they did move it back.
is that this screen input,
Yep.
we did away with the screen input, then you would be right with the other.
So is this different?
So like, this is.
We tried to, we
Do you
just
mind
tried
if
to. No, no, no.
Okay, so way back in, I did this where I took your plan, took the line of sight. I drew our house like literally to scale. So like right now, the way the current house will be, if you did it, it would come right across here. Like that's where we would be even. So all this was in front of our house. So has that actually?
No,
No, I'm just asking.
back,
so-
We're just trying to understand it.
Did it
You said it moved back.
move back to, it did 20 feet.
November meeting, it's
Yep.
It
It's
is.
20
Okay.
feet back, and so, and that's.
And which one-
we get-
which one is-
That's what's created that.
The new one?
side yard setback.
I was just, just because I
Okay.
saw that
Not the
number
number
where
where
we
we need a
I didn't
variance,
think it
so we
actually
went
had.
forward.
Okay.
It has.
Okay.
How did it move back though? Because
It's a different plan. It's not that plan.
it's not the fourth
It's
floor
a different
plan.
plan.
Okay, we
But
need
this
to
is
get,
our floor
we
plan.
need to get back in
Okay.
order here.
That's what I thought. That's what.
We're trying to answer a few questions up here for the board. The board is the one that has to make the decision. Mr. Melson, would you like to address what you were just telling me here? Because I didn't have that.
So I have the plot plan from November.
Okay, that's,
From the November meeting, and the house drawn in was 71.91 feet back from the water line. The new plot plan is 91.2 feet back, so they pushed it a total of 20 feet back from where they were, which is why they're asking for this side yard variance, because now the rectangle moves back on the pie. So that little piece sticks out.
And our goal was to avoid getting the variance, because when we came to you in August and September, there were procedural issues. And we thought, well, let's just not worry about it. Let's just move the house toward the lake, which then proceeded to cause some controversy. So we then went, so we've paid an architect to make two plans now to try to be neighborly. Now we're going back to the original plan and asking you for the variance so we can move 20 feet back more from the lake to hopefully appease everybody and just build the house we want to build. We're not trying to do anything crazy here. That it's 1,000 square feet less than our neighbor. We just want a home. And when we bought the home, we were told that there was a sightline. We were well within it. We had our architect meet us. We had a contingency on the purchase agreement. We were not stupid when we bought this. It was not a fire sale. We spent $1.5 million on this property, knowing that we could build where we wanted to build. And then the rules have been changing and petitions and whatnot. And we feel like we're doing everything that you're asking us. And we're trying to do what's in the best interest of everybody. And we will build a beautiful home, and we will be great neighbors and take care of it. But we don't know what else we can do than what we're doing. And based on November, we've moved it back another 20 feet. And that's why we're here.
Can I just ask a question, and you guys can help me just understand, where we're at now. So if we drew a line from our house to the wire rigs, I just so that I can understand it, and you had that line, how far in front of that line do you think the house actually is?
So here's the line.
That's what I'm trying to get my head around.
This is the line from the November.
Yep.
So you can see it's about halfway down this tree line. Okay, so I mean, it's, without being accurate on this, I don't know for sure, but
Mhm.
it looks pretty close to the middle of this tree line if this is an accurate representation.
Yep.
So I would say.
So that to me is the piece, that's what we've been trying to understand, is like how far in front is, and I know we've had this debate about, well, should we have the line or not? I just kind of want to understand where you know, how far in front it really is. Because that's really what's important to us is
Mr. DeWitt,
how far forward it's gonna come.
So I.
I would agree with that. It is blocking our view, but not at the lake.
Currently across with those.
It's just a change, right?
So all of that was in front. And that's why we were arguing it in November. If it really changed, then we don't. If
So this
it's,
is showing the 71.9.
right, which is what that
whereas 90.
shows.
No, that's
No,
90.
that's 90.
91.
You're at 71, this is 90.
What's the 91?
From the lake.
91 to the
Okay.
front.
It's actually 26.5.
Well, it's actually even more than that. It's
Okay.
96 to the water. It's 91.2 feet to the high water mark. I just took the 96 off because I said, Bernard, you're gonna get everybody confused.
So is it essentially even with ours? I mean,
I'm
I'm
sorry?
not saying to the inch, but like, is it essentially even to ours in the front?
No.
No, I don't think it's even because we can't get all the way back even, but it's 20 feet better than it was in November. That's the issue. And that's all we get. We can't push it back anymore. And so then you have to get into, well, we gotta build it up higher. Now we gotta get a variance that way. A lot more cost and a lot more blocking everybody.
And we're relying on what we were told when we bought the property.
And same
Not
same
what
as
you
you
were
guys.
told in
Yeah.
2016,
Yeah.
what we were told it is
Okay,
our property.
we need
I
to get
understand.
back in order here. Mr. DeWitt, I just have a question for you. How did you determine, you think they don't need a line of sight? That they don't need a variance? I haven't asked you. And how do you determine the distance back from the lake?
We have a road there. They don't have a next door neighbor.
So that, we went through this before. I mean, that's the decision we made. So you're still going with that? You're still saying that?
Yes, they're not any closer than, they're not within the 25 feet.
And if they're my next door neighbor, then I should have a 10-foot setback on the street and not a 25.
I mean, that's
You can't
where,
have it all. I
that's
mean,
where the ordinance is
There'd be
banned.
a variance applied for any time that there's variance needed.
Right. I
So I
understand.
mean, it's not saying that you can get this because they got that.
Well,
Oh, I know.
No, but
They're my
what
next door
she's,
neighbor.
what she's saying is, as Mr. Easterday said, Black's Law Dictionary. If you looked at the definition of adjacent properties, then we're gonna get all over the board. If it was truly an adjacent property, then why isn't it a 10-foot side yard setback? That's easy. We don't care about that. We're not arguing that it should be. We're just trying to get a variance for the 11.2 feet.
Do you know the distance from the high water mark to the house to the north? Do we know what that distance is?
Approximately 115 feet.
Do we have any?
Is Chuck checking?
Yes, it's not.
This says about 100 feet to the closest place.
What's the distance from the Wyrick house to the lake? High water mark.
About 131 feet
What one is that?
to the closest corner of his house to the
Because the
lake.
lake does go out much further at that point, you know.
Mr. Alvarado, I have a question for you. Are you good on the hardship claim of the bedroom needed on the first floor for the wheelchair?
At this point, as long as somebody still needs that, at some point they won't. But, you know.
What does that mean?
Exactly.
Wow.
Anybody have any comments from that's joined us online?
I don't see anyone unmuting themselves.
Pardon?
I don't see anyone unmuting.
Well, all we can vote on is what's being proposed, which is a side yard setback or required 25 feet. It's 11 feet, 2 inches or whatever that is, 11.2 feet. That's the only thing we can vote on as far as granting this. I don't know that that's going to solve this problem. Because I've got a feeling it's not going to end here. But that's all our decision is going to be. If it meets the line of sight setback, they're not asking for that. Therefore, if we approve it and somebody wants to take it to court because they don't like the interpretation, that's all we can do. And that's my feeling. That's our hands are tied. That I thought that controversy was settled back in November, but it obviously isn't. I came in here expecting a fairly easy evening, and obviously that's not going to be the case. We're ready for finding of facts.
I would like.
Anybody have any comments, questions?
I have a comment. And there may be a question afterwards, not for me. But what I'm seeing here, and in the past, any time a variance was approved, it was approval as much for a permit bill. But the line is an issue between that would have to be discussed between our building commissioner and whoever is against or go forward for the building commissioner to establish that. And I'm 100% know exactly what you're saying, because those 80-something pages or whatever it does say. I mean, the ordinances were written with that stipulation that our building commissioner had that. He's the one that establishes it, and he's the one that has the final say if there's any kind of discretion involved. Myself, I'm saying where you moved your property back 20 feet from what you did originally. The proposed sheet from the first one with it, where the original building was within the line that was drawn. And this is moved 25 feet from that established line from then. So I'm saying myself that there wouldn't be a variance needed for that, because that line is going to be 20 feet in front of that. Unless Mr. Easterday is trying to say that the house should be moved forward to the lake in order to establish that line. I'm not sure, but I don't think that should be an issue. So I myself think that the variance that's asked for is all that should be asked for at this time. We approve it. I don't think there's anything other than the ordinance requirements needed.
Well, I'm just looking back at what the vote was in November. Mr. Hubler made the motion to affirm Mr. DeWitt's original line of sight ruling. The motion had a proper second from Mr. Melson, but the motion was turned down 2-3 or 3-2. Vote was 3-2 against it. I assume that we're saying that vote made no difference at all.
I think that vote was because there was 2 or 3 different lines that was trying to be drawn at the same time, and they were trying to establish which one was right. And I didn't feel like we could try and vote over top of our building commissioner trying to say this, he's wrong or he's right. It's just that
In other words, our vote didn't do
our
anything.
vote didn't do anything as far as establishing the line.
Chuck, I think your vote did do something. You got us to move 20 feet back. And that's why we're in a side yard. So we listened to you. So I
Right.
think it did mean something.
But it didn't
And I
mean
think
anything.
Mr. Easterday did a nice job for his clients with that petition. And now we've compromised and to try to meet all the interests of the parties. So it did mean something, President Adams.
He's talking
Can I
about
just ask
establishing
one
something.
question?
Yeah.
Can you show us, and I'm just truly trying to understand, because I generally know what the shape of it looked like before, and I know that the request last time was an 11.2 setback from the road. If it moved 20 feet.
But that was
back-
August.
That was in August.
That was August. So
We
you
weren't on
remember,
the
we,
petition in November.
Okay, and no
It-
one voted, we weren't able to.
so that got pulled. So that's what we went back to.
Yeah.
We went back to the very original August plat, okay, which required a side yard setback variance. We then got a line of sight determination that said you don't have to push the house that far back. Then we did a new plat. Mr. Easterday petitioned to say, I don't agree with the building commissioner's determination.
Right,
They voted 3-2, it said that.
Right.
And now we have readjusted and moved back 20 feet.
so it truly is a line of sight between us and the Wyrick's?
No,
No,
what, let me see if I, so you had the original drawing,
Right.
then there was a move up, and then there was a move back.
right,
Okay.
yeah, and we're back based on what this board said.
So it sounds like their proposed house is about 92 feet from the high water mark.
And yours is 100 and Wyrick's is 130. And again, you get into that whole
Yeah.
adjacent structure issue when there's a roadway,
Do you
so.
have anything that would show us like what it actually looks like compared to next to ours, like just so we could see it? No.
Well, we would have had by now, but we're kind of stuck. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask one other question.
Sure.
Trying to get to, is there something here that we can work out? What my biggest concern is we don't have a line of sight established necessarily. So, okay, we build a house. Hypothetically, you sell it, someone else buys it, and they want to move something else forward.
So I'm gonna answer that question for you. And this is it wasn't appropriate for me in the last November hearing because we weren't the petitioner. As a condition of this variance, we are willing to make a deed restriction that openly states that nothing will be built in front of this house as it is proposed on this plat. And that way, if they sold it, which they're not gonna do, no one can come in and do that. A deed restriction would trump everything. There's no ordinance. It's a deed restriction. It's for life. So my clients are willing to do that. They're willing to accept that as a condition to your findings of fact to satisfy it.
That's something we can include in our findings of fact.
Yeah,
We can make a motion.
You can include everything. I don't think you can.
Almost.
Here, I'll give you that one, you do that one, you get Lester.
Any other comments or questions before we move to finding facts? Based upon the evidence submitted, I find that number one, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. Mr. Melson,
Yes.
Mr. Osborne,
Yes.
Mr. McManaway,
Yes.
Mr. Hubler,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Number two, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Mr. Melson,
Yes.
Mr. Osborne,
Yes.
Mr. McManaway,
Yes.
Mr. Hubler,
Yes.
and chair votes no. Number three, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of property. Mr. Melson,
Yes.
Mr. Osborne,
Yes.
Mr. McManaway,
Yes.
Mr. Hubler,
Yes.
and the chair votes no. Okay, entertain a motion to approve the variance.
We wanted to add the
Stipulation.
deed.
Make the motion.
I make a motion to approve this variance with stipulation that you have the deed requirement on field structures.
Been moved that we approve the motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Move to approve the motion with deed restrictions
Deed, yeah, deed restriction.
has been made. Any further discussion? How do you vote on the motion, Mr. Melson?
Yes.
Mr. Osborne?
Yes.
Mr. McManaway?
Yes.
Mr. Hubler?
Yes.
And the chair votes no. Okay, old business. We did.
No, we voted. I thought we just voted on the, okay, excuse me. I'm sorry, I thought you
Okay.
had to do that.
No, everything.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Old business? We'll get the language of the new business.
Figure out like how far. I don't have one of those. I was sort of. Yep. Well, I'm sort of, but I'll let you know. Long ago. I think was a bigger issue with the side.
Yep.
It was bigger than.
Yeah, so, you know, from my perspective, that would.
We still have to finish the meeting, folks.
Oh, sorry.
New business? Next meeting will be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, April 21st. Have anything, Sammy?
No.
It's my.
Try to get that determined and notice.
What's that?
I said, we'll double check that, get you notification that there are no cases like decided to have the. Yeah.
You have public hearing.
Yeah, you've got maybe special. Yeah, you have two of them at your, and it's high school auditorium. I do have a question for you guys that came up with with the PUD on 415 Lakeshore. And this, of course, you don't have PUD written in front of you, but, the attorney at that meeting that had the hearing at, I know Dan and hearing were at, had brought up the issue of, the property versus rezoning. It didn't make any sense to me either, and I was trying to get my head around, because they're using that property for a different use that doesn't fit within the C2 zoning, so you have to get it rezoned, correct? And the other side of that issue that you raised, though, was that there are development standards for all of our zones, including says PUD. But if you read the PUD language, it says you're approving the site plan as is, not a set of zoning standards for that. But there are PUD standards within the development standards section of the ordinance. So the language seems to potentially contradict itself.
I know. I mean, I didn't know that either until this was brought up, because we have never addressed
Now,
those.
It does say that under the PUD section that the site plan is approved per the plan's development standards, Culver specifications, etc. And that if the site plan does not state it, it's up to the plan commission to determine that. So let's say they leave off a setback on that site plan, or something to do with stormwater or whatever. According to the PUD section, the plan commission can determine that. So you don't necessarily have to even go to the development standards section of the ordinance.
Right.
But I just wanted to make both boards aware of that language. Under PUD, it seems very clear to me that you follow the site plan. But the language isn't quite crystal clear.
Yeah.
You get my drift.
Yeah, because under those procedures, when you're talking about the development being requirements for the ordinance, when you got the ordinance written 20 pages prior to that, it confused me as well. Because at no point, I know it says at no point there, it says 50 feet setback for PUD.
Yes, yes.
And there is no zoning restriction. I don't know why it was written in there, because we didn't have any, because that was a purpose for a PUD as far as under multiple uses.
Yeah.
You didn't look for 10-foot setback.
Well, it even says that the PUD is meant for flexible design and development.
Multiple uses. is what-
And it used to require commercial use,
Which
but it
that
no longer
guarantees
requires that.
Multiple use, but we reduced it, we weren't supposed to reduce it from multiple uses. We were supposed to reduce it from requiring commercial.
Right, but it also, it's not just multiple use can be one of the reasons you use it. It also says it could be topography issues, the site itself, that it needs specific development or a need for the town, or like comprehensive plan need. So, if the case is that if you look at the comprehensive plan, it basically says we need more housing, more diverse housing options. That to me seems like a reason to potentially do a PUD if you're gonna offer housing and a different type of housing potentially.
Right.
And I don't necessarily mean low-income housing. It can be any type of housing, because we don't have a ton beyond single-family homes. So there's multiple reasons you could do a PUD according to that language, not just multi-use.
Under the same things you're telling you right now, it's what was done. Collins put the, it's called Bayview, the
Yes,
last condos that were put over here by the code.
yeah,
And those issues were brought up, not the 50-foot setback, but some of the concerns were brought up as far as why people didn't like it where it was at. But under the PUD at that time, which I've always been assuming it's the same because it hasn't changed, but development of a PUD was done strictly by the needs of the town for a PUD because of public unit development. And public unit development in itself is done for public use for the town. And for that reason, that's the reason that other members voted for that. And it was never brought up as far as these other development issues that were there because it was a development for that PUD for the purpose that it was put there.
Right. And one of the reasons we recommended that particular property go the PUD route is because it was housing and spot zoning in the eyes of, we would think, and we thought residential would make more sense for that property.
Yes, it's actually taking.
Listen to this, I'm gonna enjoy. Thanks, thank you.
Yeah, it's taking out.
Yes.
It is taking out the spot zone.
I know you had your eye on.
Some of the argument,
Come on,
not to get into
don't lie.
it.
Okay, teach me up.
All right.
Not even
Do this nice big one.
for the PUD.
Yeah, yes. Okay.
Well, sir.
JD?
Yes, sir.
I guess we haven't adjourned yet. Meeting adjourned.
So I can hit the lead button.
Andrew?
No, thanks.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I didn't say that.
Barry? Barry?
I knew you had to. No, thank you. I
Chuck?